everyone. This week I thought, rather than doing, you know, the typical weathering video where I put some piano music on in the background and just crack on with it, I do a bit more of an in-depth video on exactly how I go about my weathering, what kind of products I use, techniques, airbrushes, all that kind of stuff. So a slightly longer video, but hopefully, you know, it's worthwhile as well. So I hope you enjoy it. So first up, I've just taped the areas that I don't want to gloss. So I've taped up the smoke box, the underframe, the cab, and the front and the rear. But I'll just avoid those bits by being careful when I use the airbrush. Right, so I'm trying out a new airbrush today. My trusty, well, it's not trusty anymore, my Iwata Revolution CR has packed up, I think. I'm having some problems with that. I've had it for years though, so it's had a good run, but I probably could have done with looking after it a bit better. So I got this one off Amazon for £22, and apparently it's pretty good. Like, there was a list of top 10 best airbrushes for the cost or something, and this one was #1. So for £22 I thought I'd just give it a go. So if this all goes horribly wrong today, I'm going to blame this airbrush. For anyone wondering, and I've had a few questions about this in the past, this is the compressor that I use. I just got this in like a airbrush starter kit, so I don't think it's anything fancy, but it works absolutely fine. So I've got that rigged up now, got the model in position with the tape on. Just stick a bit of gloss varnish in the thing and water it down, and then we should be good to go. Right, so far so good. So we'll see how we get on with this. So what I'm going to do here is just kind of put multiple layers on. I think with the gloss varnish, you don't want to slap it on too thick. You just want to kind of put a thin layer on, let it dry. It'll only take, you know, a minute or so to dry, and then you can put the second layer on. So I'm just carrying on building up the layers of the gloss varnish at the minute. Right, so I've just given the airbrush a really good clean with this. I just got from Amazon. You can also use good old isopropyl alcohol as well, but I think the airbrush cleaner is a little bit easier on the airbrush. Right, next thing to do is remove all the tape. Right, there we go. We've got a nice shiny boiler, and you can just see where the kind of original satin finish is on the smoke box there at the front. But we're going to kind of bring that out even more in a minute by using some matte paints on that. So I'm just going to give this 5–10 minutes to dry properly, and then we'll get some more tape back out and tape up the sections that we've just glossed. Right, next up we've got some painting to do. So I tend to use acrylic paints. I use these. They are the Tamiya colours. So for this first layer, I'm going to use a 50-50 mix of this one here, which is grey XF63, and then this one as well, which is XF1, which is just flat black. So I'm just going to mix these into the airbrush, half grey, half black. I don't water these down, they just spray fine as they are. And then we'll do the cab roof, underframe and the smoke box. Right, there we go. So you could just do a quick pass over the top now to kind of simulate, you know, grime and muck coming out the chimney and getting onto the top of the loco. I'm going to leave mine as it is. I think I might just go over the tank sides here though with just a little bit of paint. Right, next is the rear of the engine, then we've got the underframe to do as well. Now a lot of that paint we just put on things like the pipe work that was originally kind of bronze. We can tone that back down a bit and take some of that off, but leave the kind of paint in the recessed areas and stuff, which almost like a wash. It will just give it a nice effect. Similarly on the front here, on the buffer beam, we'll be taking a lot of that paint off. Again on the number and the shed code plate, things like that, we'll just turn that back down again. Right, next thing to do, this is quite important. You need a 9-volt battery. Because you've got to rotate the wheels a bit, especially when the wheels are kind of partially covered, like they are on this locomotive. There we go. Then you just got to spray them from another angle now. Right, so there we go. I'm going to leave this to dry. I'm going to do a few end gauge coaches now that I'm doing as a commission for someone, so I'll be back in a sec when this is ready for the next stage. Right, airbrush is nice and clean, so the next colour to add is a kind of rust colour. So I'm using this one here, which is from Rail Match, and it is called Freight Bauxite, which is like the colour of freight wagons. That one probably is going to need thinning a little bit. Right, that looks to be working okay. So for this bit, I'll just move the camera up a little bit. I'm going to do the inside of the bunker. Actually a little bit watery still. So you won't see most of this because there's going to be a coal load in there, but I'm just trying to build it up around the edges here, so you'll just be able to see it kind of poking out from the side when the coal load's gone in. Right, there we go. Just move the camera back down. Next thing to do is just kind of do the front of the cylinders a little bit. I want this loco to kind of look like it's been into the workshop. It's had the tank sides, the boiler polished and cleaned, but not that much attention has kind of been given to some other areas, like the kind of front end, the cylinders, the bunker, things like that. There we go. I'm going to do the buffers in the rust colour as well. And then the rear ones too. Then I might just add a little bit of rust around these pipes here and around the steps. add a little bit to the bogey on each side as well. Maybe just the front steps there as well. Right, I think that'll probably do it for the rust. I don't want to overdo it. And also we'll be adding some kind of rust weathering powder as well. So I think for now, that is that bit done. Right, airbrush has been cleaned and put away. I'm seriously impressed with that. It cost £20 and it performed really well. So I definitely recommend one of them. Right, next up we're going to take a little bit of the paint off. So I'm going to grab my isopropyl alcohol, dip a cotton bud in it, and then make sure it's not absolutely soaking. And I'm just going to take some of the paint off by just gently rubbing it. So it just kind of gives you a bit of a streaky effect and kind of leaves the dirt in the recesses and things like that. So I like the way this looks. Just try and get in that gap. There we go. Right, then same for the back. Right, I'm also just going to take a little bit of paint off on the pipes here. Oh, knock the front steps off. I'll glue those back on in a sec. I'm just going to take a little bit of the kind of grey paint off on the connecting rods as well. I think in the future I'm going to get some metallic paint to kind of finish the connecting rods off a bit, but I think in the meantime that's fine. Right, next up I get a little bit of black acrylic paint on the end of a cotton bud. And you have to have quite good aim for this, so I'll try and get the camera out of the way. And then I just give the buffers a dab like that, just to kind of simulate the oil and grease that would build up on them. And that's actually quite accurate. Same on the back. There we go. Right, next up is, I'm just going to, same again, cotton bud, this time just in isopropyl alcohol. I'm just going to clean the number a little bit. And then the same for the shed plate on the bottom there as well. Right, that's done. Right, next up I'm going to clean the wheels before I start putting coal in the tender and things like that. So again, just a cotton bud dipped in isopropyl alcohol, and I just give the wheels a rub. Right, this last bit I think is my favourite bit, which is the weathering powder. So I've just got some Humbrol black here, and now I'm just going to go over the kind of matte areas with that. So starting with the smoke box. So these do kind of come off over time. You can varnish them and you'll lose some of the powder in doing that. So you kind of will need to reapply it after and maybe varnish again. I'm not going to bother with that, just because I've already gloss varnished, so I don't want to be getting matte varnish over the top and messing around with that. So if I needed to in, you know, 6 months, a year's time, I could just put a bit more weathering powder on. It's not really the end of the world. Right, there we go, just a little bit on the running plate there. A little bit there on the tank tops. And then on the cab roof as well. Right, next up I'll get a mix of the rust weathering powder and the dark earth, and I'll just do the cylinder fronts with that. Again, this is an area that will just come off over time, but you can always just reapply it. When I've not got much left on the brush, I'll just kind of go over the underframe a bit with it. It just kind of brings the detail out a bit. And then lastly, we've got the white weathering powder here as well. So you want to go super, super sparingly with this. And then just kind of brush it over the raised areas, and it just kind of highlights the detail on these bits. Just makes them kind of pop out a little bit more. Right, so hopefully you can see that what that white powder's done there a little bit better from this angle. So it's just where the rivets are around the smoke box, it's just kind of highlighted those a bit. There where the pump is. The details on the smoke box there, just kind of makes everything pop out, just brings out the detail a bit. Almost like dry brushing, I guess. Right, last but not least, let's get some coal in there. Right, so I've just put a bit of glue in there. I use the trusty Geoscenics ballast and scenery glue. I use this for literally everything. Then I've also got the Geoscenics coal here as well. Right, there we have it, a nicely weathered L1. Just need to get a crew in there. I've not got any in at the minute, so I'll get around to that another time, I think. There we go. So the last part of any weathering job for me is I always like to run my projects by a friend of mine who is not really big into railways or anything, but I do really value his advice. So I will take that and show him now, and we'll see what he thinks. What do you think, Merlin? Yes, thank you. He said it was the best weathering project he's ever seen. Perfect. So I hope you enjoyed that, and it kind of gave you a bit of a better idea of, you know, my weathering process in a bit more detail than what I usually go into in these videos. I usually just put a bit of music in the background, and you know, hopefully you can understand what's going on, but hopefully that made it a bit clearer. So that there is the finished article. So all that's left now is to give it a good run.